This meeting is being recorded.
Share screen. Chrome tab. Daily Chumash. Okay.
Okay, let's get started. So everyone, please mute yourself so you can, so it's not a lot of noise. And we will begin with today's Chumash about the beginning of Parshas Re'eh. We're going to learn about a very interesting part in history where Moshe Rabbeinu tells Yoshua what to do once the Jews cross over the Jordan River. So remember, Moshe is going to pass away before the Jews cross over the Jordan River. And then then Moshe is telling them that he wants Yoshua to make this major event, which we learned in the book of Joshua when we studied the Tanakh class, about how they stood on two mountains and they gave curses and blessings there, really to inspire the Jews to keep the Torah mitzvahs even after Moshe passes away. And once the Jews have the miracle of crossing the Jordan and they enter Israel, to re-inspire them to commit to do the Torah and not to sin and so on. Let's do this together. See, I'm putting before you today. It's not. I'm telling you about it today, but I'm going to want you to do it when you cross over Israel, and clearly lay it out, the blessings and the curses, which means the unbelievable. Just like a parent teaches his child, if you do this, there'll be blessings. If you don't do this, God forbid, a lot of negative things will happen. So Moshe Rabbeinu wants this clearly let out to the Jews, spelled out to the Jews when they cross into Eretz Yisrael. As a bracha shetishmun el mitzvahs Hashem Elokecha, that the blessings that will come upon if you will keep the mitzvahs, the commandments of God our God, that I'm commanding you today to listen to them. If you end up listening to them, you're going to have tremendous blessings in your life. And the curses, the unfortunate things will happen. If you don't listen to the commandments of God, your God, and you move away from the path that I'm commanding you today, to go after foreign gods, which you do not know. So you have a choice in life to make over here. Either you're going to follow the commandments, or you're going to not follow the commandments and decide to listen to other gods, either listen to Hashem or not. So Moshe is going to have Joshua with all the Leviim and the Kohanim there, spell it out to the Jews and say, listen, you have a choice in life. Who do you want to listen to? You want to listen to God's advice? Or do you want to listen not to God's advice, to foreign God's advice? And then you'll have the blessings if you listen to Hashem. And if you don't listen to God, unfortunately, you'll have the opposite. Now, Rashi says, we learn from here that one of the key elements that you're leaving the Jewish faith is if you decide to do the prohibition of serving idols. So if you do that one, it doesn't, even though it might only be one thing, and you say, I want to be Jewish in every other aspect, but I don't want to be Jewish in believing in idols, that's right away as if you're denying the entire Torah. It's not just one of the mitzvahs, but it's as if you're denying the entire Torah. Rashi says we learn out from this verse. And it will be. And now he continues to, Moshe says that's the first thing I want you to do when you get there. I want you to lay out the rules, the blessings. And here are some other points of information that Moshe is teaching them now that they need to learn about when they enter Israel. So it's already ideas, the laws of the sacrifices and stuff which will take place when they enter Israel. But Moses is already telling them the information now. Verse 29. And it will be when you come to the land, you're going to enter Israel, you're going to get over the Jordan River, you're going to get into Israel, and you will come to the place that I'm bringing you to inherit it. First, he actually is continuing to talk about the blessings and the curses. He's saying there's going to be two mountains. Now, these we learned in the book of Joshua that these two mountains, which he says here are Gerizim and Aval, they're actually not, we can even see it from the Chumash today, they're not right next to the Jordan River. So it's kind of going to be a major miracle how the Jews are going to travel more into central Israel, because they just crossed over the border on the eastern side of Israel. But they're going to miraculously travel many, many miles to these two mountains, which are called Gerizim and Aval. I wonder if they think they know where it is today. I'm not sure. So Mount Gerizim and Mount Aval, you're going to go over there. And as Rashi explains, that they're going to turn put 6 Jews on one mountain and 6 Jews on the other mountain, and they go turn to the mountain called Grizim. They're going to give blessings, and they say, "Blessed be the man who doesn't make an idol. That is going to have tremendous blessings in his life." And then they turn to the other mountain, the Mount Avol, and they say, "Cursed be the person who makes idols." So they constantly go back and forth. They put 6 tribes on one mountain, 6 tribes on the other mountain, and they made it very clear with the Levites and the Kohanim and the Ark in the middle between the 2 mountains, letting everybody know that they're going to have tremendous blessing in their life if they follow Hashem's mitzvahs, and vice versa if they don't. Now Rashi, verse 30, Lamed continues to describe where the location of this will be. This is after you cross over the Jordan River. After the way the sun, direction of the sun, right? The sun travels from east to west. When you're going to go moving into the land of Israel, these 2 mountains will be following inwards of the sun towards the west. Beretz HaKanani, in the Canaanite land. Hayosh Ba'arava, that's dwelling in the plains. Mul HaGilgal, this is opposite place called Gilgal. Eitzel Elene Mamre, at a distance from Gilgal, facing a place called Elene Mamre. So just you want to know where Elone Mamre is. So Rashi here tells you that I believe he says over here is that is where Shechem is. That's where Nablus is. That's where Shechem is. So it's going to be at a distance. Let me just see here, make sure. Yeah, that Rashi says that's Shechem, that's Nablus, that's where Joseph is buried today. And that is the location where where Moshe is telling the Jews that they're supposed to take place, the curse and the blessing on these 2 mountains. And now, at that time, the place called Gilgal, this is a distance from Gilgal. I believe we're going to see that Gilgal is going to be the area where the Mishkan, where the tabernacle will be taking place. We'll see that in a moment. Where was the tabernacle? Evan, let's continue on to the next verse, to verse Lamed Aleph 31. Key, because because you're crossing over the Jordan, there's going to be again tremendous miracles as you cross over the Jordan entering to Israel. The Jordan River will split for you. They're going to pull out these big rocks, like we learned in the Tanakh class. Lavi the Resha says, you're going to go into there to conquer the land of Israel, and there'll be a sign. In other words, the unbelievable miracles that will take place as you cross over the Jordan River will be a clear sign for you that you're going to succeed in conquering Israel. The land that God is giving to you, and you will inherit it, and you will dwell in it. You're going to dwell in this land. There's going to be very clear miracles as you go in with Joshua to conquer the land of Israel. Signs that will be such big miracles that you'll know you're going to be successful in conquering the land from the Canaanites. And you have to make sure to keep all the commandments and the laws that I'm putting before you today, that I'm commanding to make sure you do everything correctly and everything that you do in the right way. So what do I want you to do? What's one of the number one things that a Jew needs to do when he conquers the land and it moves over from the idolatrous nations to the Jewish ones? That's what Moshe is going to tell them the next important information when they enter Israel. These are the laws and the commandments. Asher tishmeru la'asais that you should do. Ba'aretz asher noisein Hashem alekeya v'seichem b'chal kol yom asher tamchaim al adama. All the days that you're living in this land, this is what you should make there for fulfill. You have to, number one of the important things you have to do, abi ta'abdum. You have to completely destroy as kol ha'makayim all the places asher avdu sham ha'goyim that the nations served over there, all the idols and all the different places that the idolatrous nations who went against God and started serving other idols over there, asher tam yarshim that you're inheriting them as alikayim, alaharim, haramim, balagvais, all the different kinds of worships to their gods. The lofty mountains, right? In the big mountains, they made different idols. Upon the hills, the lush trees, valagvais, vesachas kol yitzran, and all the lush trees, you have to make sure that you have to not just like erase it a little bit, completely and utterly destroy from the foundation any kind of idolatry that's left over in Israel. And make sure every location. Verse 3, you should tear down their altars. The altars in those days, they would make altars out of like a bunch of stones, put them together and create an altar for their idols. You have to make sure to like destroy those stones. And then they would kind of hew out and cut out a one stone kind of a pedestal for the idol, for an idol, like a one large stone. That one also, you have to get rid of that. And then these different kinds of trees, they would serve some kind of trees in their idolatrous ways. You have to get rid of those creeds. Get rid of any names. So any names that they use, they call different places, different names after different idols, saint this and that, like different kinds of idols that were there. Once Israel takes it over, you have to change the name. Don't leave the original name that the idolatrous nations called them before mentioning their idols, but make sure to rename them to the opposite. In other words, instead of saying the all-seeing eye, which Rashi gives an example, they called one of their idols, call it the thorn in the eye. In other words, flip the names. Don't continue to perpetuate at all in any kind of fashion. Not the idols, not their altars, not their names. Make sure to get rid of it. You shouldn't mention their idols at all. When you're conquering Israel and you're getting the land, get rid of any remnants of the idolatrous ways that were there. Verse 4. Don't do this to guide your God. Now, what does it mean? Don't do this to guide your God. The simple meaning seems to be, we just said, destroy all idolatrous, altars and names, just get rid of it. And don't do this could simply mean don't do, God forbid, don't do this to Hashem. You have to treat Hashem with respect. Anytime you have a letter of God's name or holy pamphlets, you have to make sure to bury them and treat them with respect. And another interpretation is that you shouldn't offer, just like the people offered on the different altars to them, you shouldn't offer to their idols either. Now, the Rashi brings down from the Talmud, but the commentaries say no one would have thought to copy the idol. In other words, what you don't have to tell me that destroy the idols, but don't destroy Hashem's name and have respect for it. Like treat Hashem's name and the holiness in the holy name. Way, of course, no one would do that. He means to say, don't be like them, that you shouldn't go against God, and then God will want to chase you out the same way He chased the non-Jewish nations out to make sure that you stay protected in the land. Verse 5. For God, He wants one location, and this is going to be the tabernacle which was called Shiloh. Actually, I wanted to go there on my last trip to Israel. I didn't make it there. God willing, next time I'll go. They claim to know where the tabernacle of Shiloh is, that they found the flat land, and for many, many years, for over 300 years, until the temple was built. You have to realize that King David, as we're going to see in the verses now, and King Solomon will not build the Beis Hamikdash, will not prepare and build the temple until many, many years later, hundreds of years later. So where did the Jews serve for most of those 350 years? Where did they serve? Well, they built a Mishkan Shiloh in the Shiloh region, in that area, and they built a tabernacle in a place over there, but it was a little bit more permanent because the tabernacle wasn't traveling in the desert, being put together and taken apart, but it was much more permanent. Verse 6, when you come to Shiloh over there, you should bring your burnt offerings and your zivchechem, your peace offerings, that your obligations, and your tithing, which means every 10th animal that you have to bring, you should bring it to the new location that's going to be in Israel in Shiloh. And also, when you eat the Meiser Sheni, the second tithe, you have to eat it within the walls of Jerusalem. You'll eat it in that location. And the first fruits that you bring to the Kohen, you should bring it over there to this Mishkan Shiloh. Your firstborn animals, all these things, your vows, your donations, your cattle, your sheep, the firstborn animals, you should make sure to bring to this new location, to Mishkan Shiloh, to where the tabernacle of Shiloh will be, in order to fulfill your obligations at the new location that Hashem is going to place in Israel. You're going to eat over there at that new location. You'll rejoice with all your endeavors that they were successful. With your household, everything that Hashem had blessed you, you're going to go with this tremendous blessing. Based on how much blessings you have, you'll make sure to bring Hashem the proper gifts to this new location, to the Shiloh location, where the Mishkan will be. Let's continue on verse 8. Now you also have to be very careful to not bring whatever sacrifice you want. In other words, there's going to be a period in time when you cross over the Jordan River, and at that time the Shiloh Mishkan will not be built yet. Okay, I believe it'll take 14 years, 7 years for the Jews to conquer Israel, and another 7 years for them to divide the land in Eretz Yisrael. So 7 years to conquer and 7 years for them to divide it. During that time, Shiloh won't be built yet. They'll have like a non-permanent tabernacle in a place called Gilgal, I believe. And during that time, you will be allowed to bring some of your sacrifices on private altars, almost like you could almost build your own private little synagogues in order to bring a limited, only the sacrifices which you could bring on what's called a bama, a personal. In other words, we said get rid of all the altars to idolatrous. Really only have one main altar for Hashem, and that's going to be in Shiloh when you're going to erect it 14 years later. But in this 14-year period, you can bring certain sacrifices on your own small altars that you will make, and those are the sacrifices that are gifts that you are not obligatory gifts, but gifts that you want to bring on your own. You could bring those to your little bamas, to your little altars for the next 14 years. In the first 9, because during those 14 years, you haven't fully established the peace and, seeing which tribe goes where and conquered the full land. During that time, you haven't erected a permanent mishkan, a permanent tabernacle where everything should be brought. And until finally, after 14 years, you will have a semi-permanent structure, a permanent structure in a place called Shiloh. But even Rashi saying, the verse is telling us that even after the 14 years, it's not going to be a full peace, because not until 300 years later, 300 plus years later, when King David will come and fight all the remaining enemies in Israel and chase them out and bring peace to the land, will there be full tranquility. And only at that point, once that's done, will Hashem give the command to build the actual temple that we know of today in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, which will become the permanent structure for the Jewish people. You're going to pass over the Jordan River, Moshe tells them. Dwell in the land that Hashem is inheriting to you. And he will, at that point, bring peace from all the enemies. And you will dwell securely in the land of Eretz Yisrael, because that point, after the 14 years, at least he's talking about over here, everybody will know where he belongs. All the tribes will know what their location is. You'll have peace from the nations around you. And Rashi explains that Hashem will not leave nations and enemies until King David time within Israel to challenge the Jews in order to see if they're following Hashem's ways. So there won't be peace for another 350 years till King David will come, and then King Solomon, and we build the actual base of Mikdash, and only then will Hashem build the final permanent structure that will last for many years to come. And that is the end of today's Chumash. I guess we'll leave it over here. Mirz Hashem will continue with Hashem's help tomorrow, 12:30 again, as we continue the class together. Have an amazing